All right, good afternoon, class. Thank you for joining me. Um, Welcome to yet another very interesting moment, especially in our literary world. Remember that we have actually created a world for ourselves. We are no longer in the general world. We're going to be looking at things from the literary perspective. So, in our literary world, you're welcome once again. Today, we'll be looking at general elements of literature. General elements of literature. Yes, the other class, don't forget we try to establish the fact that we are looking at the fictional aspect of literature, looking at the poetry, looking at prose, and looking at drama. So, what exactly connects all of these? Okay, what connects all of these? Yes, as we progress, we're going to be seeing their specific elements, the elements of prose, elements of drama, and elements of poetry. But we want to first of all look at the general elements of all of the fictional literary work before we go very specific. Okay, so elements of literature, as you can see in our title, the elements of literature are the fundamental components which help us to appreciate literature. Okay? Yes. When we look at literature as a subject, remember in our other class, we already established that it's a creative or imaginative work of art. But then they have their general elements. For example, if you look at the points we have there, the first one there is subject matter. Subject matter. Every literary work, be it poetry, be it prose, be it drama, has what is subject matter. Do you understand? They all have their subject matter. Yes. So, but then what is subject matter? Yes. There's an idea before you pick up your pen to begin to write, something is the matter. Something is wrong somewhere that you want to address. That is why every book you pick, you discover that, oh, this book is tilting towards patience, is tilting towards a good future. Yes, there is always a problem that you want to address. Okay? Yes. Let's quickly see how we can break it down. The point, subject matter, will be what exactly are we looking at? What is necessitating this literary piece? Okay? Remember, I like to always say that no literary work is written in a vacuum. No literary work is written in a vacuum. There is a problem somewhere that you want the world to be aware of, and that is why you want to write this literary piece. And that becomes your subject matter. Okay? Yes. So, next we have the theme. Every literary work must have themes. Remember I said that these are general elements of literature. We're going to be having, every literary work must have their central idea. Okay? They have their general themes. Some may be specific, and then we can have sub-themes. Yes. Let me also make us understand that subject matter and themes, they are very close, but not exactly the same. But then they are very close. Okay? Yes. The theme will be the central idea. That is why after a book, you will see the theme of hope, the theme of determination, the theme of death even, the theme of nature, and all of that. Okay? Yes. So theme will mean the central idea of a literary work. Remember that it's a general element because even poetry will have themes, prose will have themes, and then drama will have themes. Okay? Yes. And then from there, we proceed to the next one, which is setting. Setting. What exactly is setting? Yes. Setting can actually be taken from the root word set. Yes. Setting. Now, every literary work has a particular geographical location or time, period. So when we talk about setting in literature, we are going to be seeing the place and time of a literary work. Yes, these are, or let me be very specific. This is one element that will help you to fully understand a literary piece. Setting. If you read a book about a particular place, let me bring up a particular text that we have seen in the past. I don't know how many of us that have seen the book Purple Hibiscus by Chimamanda Adichie. Yes, you can see the setting is a suburb in the east, in Aba, okay? In Aba, and then we also have some element of it even in Lagos. So we see the movement of the setting. At a point, it goes to explain life in Aba, and then it will move to the village, how they live their life there. And then setting is about the place and time of a literary work. Okay? And then this, like I said before, this place and time will help us to know that kind of life they live there. How do we understand some of these settings? Through language, through even the addressing will help you to know, through even names of characters. Okay? Names of characters, their dressing, their food, their culture, all of these things will be what will be helping us to know that, oh, this book is talking about a particular place. This book is set in the east. It is set in the west. It is set in the north. Okay? And then, yes, like Elechi Amadi's the concubine, Elechi Amadi's The Concubine has a typical setting of a suburb in River State. Okay? So that is that about that. And then we move to plots. Plot is a very, very important element of literature because every literary work has a structure. Every literary work, in short, even permit me to extend this now beyond literary work. Every writing has what we call a structure. So when we talk about plot, we mean the structure of a literary work or the sequential arrangement of a literary work. So sequence is actually very important because if a story is going to begin now, the reader wants to know how is it progressing. Will the characters grow to become something else? And then when they grow, what becomes their phase at that point? And then it will progress to that. Even the world has sequence. Even the life we live has sequence. That is plot. Okay? The world, when you wake up, is in the morning. At the point, it progresses to afternoon. And then before you know it, it's evening. So even God himself is not ignorant of what we call plot in literature. That's sequence. Okay? Every story has a progression. Okay? So when we begin to look at all of these things side by side, you see that a story has an exposition. I'm talking about plot now, an exposition. And then from there, it will go to rise in action up until the climax, and then fall in action, and then how is the story going to be resolved eventually? Okay? How will it be resolved eventually? So the plots of a literary work cannot be overemphasized. Every literary work has what? The plot structure, the sequence, because it will help us to understand. Then the even sequence, the concept of plots can also be seen in different perspectives. Okay? When we will be discussing plots as a broad topic, we look at the chronological type of plot, the linear, and then all of that. Sometimes some texts don't even start from the beginning, and then you get very confused. You understand? It doesn't start from it. Sometimes it can even start from the end, and it progresses from that to the beginning. Some literary works can be as literary as that because every writer has their style. They know what they want to write about. They know how to write it. They know how to structure it in a way that it will be interesting. Yes. And then to be able to pull out these plots, to pull out this structure very well, we have a lot I mean, a lot. You have suspense. Sometimes they hold you, you don't even know what is happening, but you want to know what is happening. But the writer is saying, no, you're not going to know that now. And then they just take you to a different kind of twist. Okay? And then before you know it, there's also flashback. They just take it flashback. These are things that help to build a very beautiful plot structure. Okay? All right. So from plot, we'll go to character. Character. Yes, in a layman's language, character is synonymous to behavior or attitude. But then in literature, character will be personas. Okay? Personas. They are human beings, fictional beings used by writers to be able to bring out their stories very well. You have seen, I don't know how many of us that have watched them in very popular even movies. You see your characters. Some of us even have our favorite characters. Some of these characters, in short, I bet you that most of these characters are not even real. They are imaginary characters. But you just like them owing to their behavior, how the writer has been able to project them for you. Okay? Yes, characters, we'll be looking at the different characters too when we look at it as a specific topic. So, like I said, characters are personas. Okay? They are personas. Some of them are not even human beings. Some of them could even be animals. Animals can also be characters, yes. Sometimes even abstract objects, abstract materials can be characters, depending on the creativity and the style of the writer. Yes, I'm sure some of us have seen Animal Farm by George Orwell. Animal Farm, yes. George Orwell tried to project the Russian Revolution at a point in time when it was actually very, very, well, yes, how he decided to put it. But they wouldn't use human beings. They wouldn't use human beings to be able to bring out the story in a very fictional way. Yes, he decided to use animals, giving them human qualities, animals and other abstract materials, giving them human qualities that makes the books very, very interesting. And then Animal Farm is Animal Farm that we don't want to forget in a hurry. And then we have interesting characters there like Snowball, like Napoleon, like Mr. Jones, the owner of Animal Farm, up until he was chased away by animals who are also characters. So these are the things we're going to be talking about. And then we have characterization, very synonymous, very close to character. Yes, characterization, except that we have a different suffix added to character. But then character and characterizations are like two sides of the same coin. You cannot discuss character without looking at characterization. And then you cannot discuss characterization without looking at character. So what exactly is characterization? All right. Now, when we talk about characterization, a writer will decide how to build up to a character, how to give birth, fictional birth to a character, as a matter of fact. Okay? The writer will decide how to build, how to modify, how to shape a character to what he or she wants the character to be. Is it going to be a good guy? Is it going to be a bad guy? Is it going to be a protagonist? Is it going to be an antagonist? Is it going to be a villain? Is it going to be a foil? Okay? So these are fictional personas built by writers to give life and to give meaning to literary works. Okay? To give life and meaning to literary works. So characters are personas, while characterization is the modification, how the writer tries to build up this character and then give them behavior, give them attitude, and then project them in a way that they become who they become in the text. Okay? All right. And then we have narrative technique. We have narrative technique. This is another very important element of literature because it helps us to understand the perspective. Every literary work will have a narrative technique. Who is telling this story? and then what technique is this story coming from, okay? Narrative techniques we can have. Is it going to be told? Will this story be told in first person, where we have the use of I? Remember, it's literature in English. So I told us that at all times we're going to be referring to English language, and all the elements of English language may have to play in here because it is literature in English. So when we say narrative technique, we may have to be looking at, okay, the technique. You know, a writer has his style. They decide on the technique that they want to use to build up a story. Okay, is it going to be told in first person? Will it be better told in second person or third person narrative style or technique? Okay, so this element is very important. Like I said, most of us are going to be good writers in future, and then you have to know how to decide your technique, your narrative technique, when you want to begin to write. These are things you take your time to actually structure out before you begin to write. And then we have what I want to call the tool, the ingredients we use to prepare all of this literary meal: language stroke diction. Language stroke diction. All right. Now, we know that it's literature. And then if it is literature, it has to be literary. It doesn't have to be literal. So it means we have literal and literary. Okay? So because it's literature, it's important we take our time. What language technique, what diction will be perfect for this kind of writing, this kind of literary piece? So a good writer must be very good in selecting language, diction, words, seed words to make your writing very interesting. If you're writing a narrative piece, for example, and then you want to make it look very straight, very literal, like letter writing, I wonder who's going to read it. So you must be very conversant with the figure of speech, use of simile, use of personification, use of alliteration, irony, and all of that. You need to build all of this. And above all, your word selection has to be fantastic. Your word diction means vocabulary, words, okay? Your word selection has to be very, very fantastic. You must know how to use a particular adjective to describe a character that will wow your reader. You must know when to use enormous instead of big, because you want to create imagery. You want your readers to see what you are writing, okay? So when we use some kind of good diction, it gives us clear imagery. Readers want to see, they want, like you're watching a TV. When they are reading a text, they want to make it look like they're watching a TV, okay? They want to feel, they want to smell this word, okay? So they want a feel, like a touch. Words, dictions gives us imagery, okay? Writers use dictions to create imagery in the mind of the readers. As a matter of fact, we want to know how to use words to create a TV, to make us feel, to make us touch, to make us taste. Yes. Sometimes you see a word and then you're even smelling a word. Yes. Writers can be as proficient as that. They could make you smell like normal smell using some very good words. Okay? So, basically, these are the general elements of literature. These are the general elements of literature. As a matter of fact, we have seen subject matter, we have seen theme, we have seen setting, we have seen plot, we have seen character and characterization. Character and character. Please emphasis on these two because they are not exactly the same. Okay? Character and characterization. Characters and characterization. Emphasis on the two because one helps to bring out the other one. The other one, like I said before, they are personas, while the second one is modification. The way a writer decides to project, to make use of this character, okay, so that it becomes what he or she wants him or her to become. And then we have narrative techniques, language, and diction. All right, class. It must be noted also that these elements that we have highlighted here are general elements or general components, okay? They are just normal or general elements of literature. It is important to understand that as we progress with the specifics, when we look at poetry as a genre, when we look at prose or drama, they all have their specific elements. They all have their specific elements where we'll see that, oh, these elements will be specifically for drama. For example, the use of acts and scenes will be specific to drama, okay? While the use of condensed use of language, so to say, yes, where language is highly condensed, where it is not broken, where it is not just poured in pieces, will be closely related to poetry. And then we also have prose, that is narrative in form because it's a story, and then we have to narrate it, prose, okay? So they will have their different elements, obviously, as we progress. But it's important we know that, yes, there's theme in poetry, prose, drama. There's subject matter in poetry, prose, drama. There's language in poetry, prose, drama, use of diction in these three genres. Okay, so, and that's for that. I'm hoping that we've been able to gain something from this very interesting class, looking at the general element of literature. Yes. Can we, at this point, look at some questions? Some questions that will help us to fully understand this topic, elements, general element of literature. All right. So we'll look at question, yes, the performance in a play constitutes already, this is actually very fine, because this is already telling us this is already tilting towards a particular genre, which is drama. The performance in a play constitutes chorus, character, okay, audience, and then cast. Remember they said the performers, well, performers are maybe like music performers, okay, now. But then the question is actually, okay, maybe we could say chorus, but then that would be very specific when it has to do with, performing, okay? So we'll pick this, we'll say characters, and then we'll have casts. The performers in a play constitutes the chorus, the characters, the audience, the cast. Okay. But then if we mean the general performance, everybody that acted will be cast. But then performers specifically, I think it is specific, so chorus will be fine. Okay? All right. Now, the feelings and attitudes of a writer are conveyed through mood, okay, style, theme, setting. Okay, we've talked about setting, we've talked about theme, we've talked about style, but then the feelings and attitude of a writer are conveyed by the mood, okay? The mood, the feelings. All right. Now look at the repetition of initial consonant sound. Now this is about figurative language now. The repetition of initial consonant sounds. Initial consonant sounds. So that is alliteration. That is alliteration. And then let's look at it. A short poem with a witty or sarcastic ending. Okay, that's an epigram. A literary piece used to mock or ridicule satire. Okay. The first 8 lines of a sonnet. The first 8 lines of a sonnet is an octave. Okay. A dead metaphor is overused and ineffective. Now, okay, the term used for unraveling of complications from the plot and of literary work. Okay, now I think this is actually very important. The term used for the unraveling of complications of the plot at the end of a literary work. Yes, at this point now, we have seen a text, and then the term used to unravel it. We are trying to unravel the complications at the end of a literary work. Remember they said at the end of a literary work. It can't be climax because climax does not occur at the end. Okay? It can be conflict because conflict is struggle between two opposite forces. And then it can be tension. So the obvious answer is denouement. Denouement can also be called, I mean, we have resolution, but then this is specific now. The term used for the unraveling of complications. So it's denouement. At this point, everything is resolved. Okay? All right. Now, let's look at this final one. Literary work that ridicules. I think we've seen this before. We said the satire, the mood. Okay? Ladies and gentlemen, I think, okay. Now, this is a poem of lamentation on death. Okay? Obviously, an elegy. Okay. An elegy is a poem of mourning. Okay. Okay. Now, we need to look at this. Poetry is defined as what now? Words written in sequence, condensed of language, evocation of feelings, and then legends and myths. Now, poetry is defined by what now? Evocation of feelings. Yes. Condensed use of language is actually, yes, it's one of the elements of literature, but it is not a definition. What it means is that it is, I mean, the use of condensed language is very important in poetry, but it cannot be our definition. It is evocation of feelings, okay? And then pick the odd item from the list below. We have romance, we have novel, we have short story, and then we have sonnet. We'll look for a particular minute. I am unkind. Okay, let's see if we can have it running where the audience knows more. Okay, this is a type of irony. Lines and rhyme poetry is known as dramatis persona is the same as cast, okay? Okay. Okay, and then a character who creates humor. Okay, a character, now this is about character too, since it has to do with one of the elements we talked about. A character who creates humor in a play is with an A, flat, B, heroine, and then C, round character, and clown. I think this is very specific. A clown because of the fact that it has to do with creation of humor. Humor is to make people laugh. That's obviously a clown. Ladies and gentlemen, our class has ended for today. Please, you can always take our time to look at the app. Take our time to look at the app and then enjoy yourself. I'll see you next when we now begin to look at figurative language and prepare to review the tests. Once again, thank you.